Mr. Dalton, that woman is drugging your children." The words echoed across the cavernous foyer of the Dalton estate like a gunshot. Gloria Stanford, housekeeper, gatekeeper and self-appointed protector of the Dalton family legacy, stood rigid in front of her employer, her voice trembling with righteousness and rage. She had served this family for 18 years, buried the matriarch, raised the twins, managed every nanny that came and went. But never had she felt the threat so close. Conrad Dalton stood beside the grand staircase, one hand gripping the oak banister, his brows furrowed beneath weary eyes. His tailored suit looked untouched by the chaos of the past 6 months, but his face told another story, lines that hadn't been there before, shadows that never lifted. He looked down the hallway toward the playroom, where laughter, his daughter's laughter, floated into the quiet like music from another world. That was the problem. The girls were laughing. They had been sleeping, resting, dreaming, and Gloria couldn't accept that. Across from her stood the target of her fury, Elaina Brooks, 29. But she didn't flinch, didn't protest, didn't even blink. Her gaze stayed level, steady, as if the accusation wasn't new, as if she had been waiting for this exact moment. She had. "I'm sorry," Conrad said, voice low, controlled. "Could you repeat that?" Gloria stepped forward, voice rising. "She's doing something unnatural. 2 children who couldn't sleep for months, who woke up every hour screaming for their mother. Now suddenly they sleep through the night? Like angels? It's not normal. Not unless she's giving them something." "Something like what?" "Sedatives. Melatonin. I don't know. But I'm telling you, she's drugging them." Elaina said nothing. She didn't shift. Didn't defend herself. That silence, more than anything, made Gloria's voice grow sharper. "She doesn't belong here, Mr. Dalton. You know nothing about her. She came from the inner city with no proper references. No agency. Just a phone call and a resume. Who does that?" Conrad turned to Elaina slowly. "Is that true?" Elaina nodded, her voice soft. "Yes. I didn't come through the usual channels. But you were desperate." He was. 6 nannies in 5 months. 2 therapists. 1 failed intervention. All gone, defeated by the same impossible task, getting Lily and Liana Dalton to sleep through a single night. Since the crash, since Elise, their mother, his wife, had died in that twisted car on Route 37, the girls hadn't known peace. Neither had he. "Gloria," he said carefully, "those are serious accusations. They are serious. Because I care. Someone has to think about those girls. You think this is a miracle?" Her voice cracked. "It's not a miracle. It's manipulation." Elaina finally stepped forward. Not fast, not aggressive. Just a single step. Her hands stayed at her sides. Her eyes didn't leave Conrad's. "If you believe I've done something wrong," she said, her voice calm, deliberate, "I suggest we install surveillance in the twins' bedroom. You can review every moment from bedtime until morning. I have nothing to hide." The foyer fell silent. Even Gloria's breath caught. "Cameras?" Conrad asked. "Yes," Elaina said simply. "If you're worried about my methods, let's put everything on the table." Gloria blinked. That's not what I meant. I just..." Elaina reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. With a few taps, she brought up a video. "I've already recorded parts of their nighttime routine," she said. "I wanted to document their progress. Would you like to see?" She offered the screen. The still frame showed Lily curled against her sister, a small stuffed giraffe between them. In the corner, Elena's voice could be heard humming a lullaby. No pills. No syringes. Just warmth. Conrad didn't reach for the phone. He was watching something else, Gloria. Her face had changed. Not rage. Not shock. But fear. "Elaina," he said quietly, "what exactly do you do at night that gets them to sleep?" Elena's gaze flicked to Gloria, then back to him. "That's a longer conversation, Mr. Dalton. But it starts with understanding why they couldn't sleep in the first place." "Which is?" She looked at him for a long time, then said, "Because they're afraid that if they close their eyes, they'll wake up alone. Like their mother did." The air left the room. Gloria took a step back. Conrad stared. What did you just say? I said they're afraid. Not of the dark. Not of monsters. But of silence. The kind of silence that came the night Elise didn't come home. He hadn't told anyone that. Not even the therapist. Who told you that? Elaina smiled sadly. No one. But it's what they show me. Every night. In how they cling to each other. In how they wake up exactly at 3:17 a.m., the same time the accident was called in. His knees nearly gave way. This wasn't a nanny. And Gloria knew it. She stepped forward again, desperate now. Mr. Dalton, this is manipulation. She's clearly done research, or she's guessing, or... Elaina spoke again quietly. Would you like me to show the rest of the footage? Or would you rather talk privately? Gloria turned red. Conrad exhaled. Long and slow. No, he said, voice low. No more footage tonight. I think I've seen enough. Then to Elaina, you'll stay. Gloria's eyes widened. You're keeping her? She's the first person in half a year to make my daughters feel safe. I'm not about to throw that away. Gloria looked at Elaina. Then back at Conrad. You're making a mistake. Maybe, he said. But I've made worse. The twins' laughter rang again from the back of the house. Pure. Unburdened. Conrad turned toward it. But behind him, Gloria stared at Elaina with something deeper than hate. She wasn't just threatened. She was terrified. Because she had just realized. This woman hadn't come here by accident. She had come with a plan. And that plan had only just begun. Elaina Brooks didn't sleep that night. Not because of fear. But because everything was going exactly as planned. She sat at the edge of her small guest-room bed, laptop open, fingers gliding over a spreadsheet that most people in the Dalton household would never understand. Not because of its complexity, but because they never expected a nanny to compile patterns of hiring decisions across a Fortune 500 real estate company. Especially not this nanny. Especially not a black woman with no proper references. She paused only to glance out the tall window overlooking the garden. The moonlight spilled over the swing set where Lily and Liana had played earlier that day, giggling, shouting, chasing each other under a sky that, for once, didn't feel heavy with grief. They had slept. 6 hours straight. 3 nights in a row now. That was more than a miracle. It was progress. But progress always invited resistance. And Gloria Stanford wasn't finished. The next morning, the air in the mansion was too quiet. Even the staff seemed to move differently. Slower. Hesitant. Avoiding Elena's gaze. Word had spread. The housekeeper's accusations. The nanny's calm response. The offer of cameras. The video. No one said anything. But the silence had weight. In the dining room, Conrad Dalton sipped his coffee without his usual paper. He didn't read the headlines. He didn't glance at his phone. He just stared out the window, watching the twins chase a butterfly across the grass in their pajamas. He hadn't seen them like that since Elise died. Would you like me to prepare their breakfast this morning? Elaina asked from the doorway. He turned to her slowly. There was something different in his eyes now. Not doubt. Not suspicion. Curiosity. How did you know? He asked. About the time of the accident. About their fear of sleeping. About Elise. Elaina walked forward, her tone as even as ever. Because trauma leaves fingerprints. Children don't speak it out loud. But they show it, in routines, in patterns, in silence. He set the cup down. That's not something nannies usually say. No, she agreed. It's not. He studied her. Who are you really? Elaina gave a soft smile. Someone who listens closely. He let the silence stretch, then nodded. Yes. Breakfast would be good. In the kitchen, Gloria was already waiting. She stood by the refrigerator, arms crossed, lips pressed into a tight line. 2 other staff members quickly found excuses to leave as Elaina entered. You fooled him, Gloria said coldly. For now. I haven't fooled anyone. You think showing one cute video and talking in that soft voice makes you trustworthy? Elaina moved to the counter, pulled out the eggs, the blueberries the twins liked, and said nothing. You're hiding something, Gloria snapped. I don't know what it is yet, but I will find out. Elaina cracked an egg with perfect precision. Then another. Then said, without turning around, "Would you like to see the rest of the documentation tonight? I'll include timestamps and behavioral notes." Gloria's hands clenched into fists. "I don't care about your notes," she hissed. "I care about this house. This family. And I won't let someone like you." Elaina finally turned. Slowly. Calmly. "Someone like me?" she asked, voice still low. Gloria blinked. "You know what I mean." "Yes. I think I do." They stood in silence. Then Elaina turned back to the stove. "The girls prefer their pancakes shaped like stars," she said. "I'm sure you know that." Gloria stormed out. That afternoon, Conrad invited Elaina to his office. He gestured to the leather armchair across from his desk and said, "I don't like being blindsided." "You weren't," she replied gently. "You were desperate. There's a difference." He nodded slowly. "You're right. I have experience," she said carefully. "More than most nannies. Clearly. I didn't lie on my resume, Mr. Dalton. I just didn't advertise everything." "What exactly is everything?" She reached into her bag, pulled out a slim folder. "You asked who I really am. I think it's time you knew." He opened it. A degree from NYU, Master of Science in Child Psychology. Licensure. Academic awards. Peer-reviewed publications. She watched his eyes widen with each page. "You were a trauma consultant?" he asked. "At New Horizons Medical?" "For 5 years." "Then why?" he trailed off. Elaina waited. "Why are you here?" he finally asked. "In this house? Pretending to be a nanny?" She looked him in the eye. "I'm not pretending. I am their nanny. But that's not all I am." He leaned back in his chair. "So what are you doing here, really?" She didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, she stood. "I'd like to pick the girls up from school today. I want to talk to their teachers." He hesitated, then nodded. "All right." But as she reached the door, he asked one last question. "Do I need to worry?" She turned. Met his eyes. "That depends," she said softly, "on whether you want the truth." Then she was gone. And Conrad sat at his desk, staring at the open folder, wondering what kind of woman had just stepped into his life, and what storm she might bring next. By Thursday, the whispers had started. Not from Conrad Dalton. Not from the children. But from the help. The mansion was a world unto itself, a sprawling estate perched high above the city, where old money echoed in the marble, the art, the manicured silence. And within its walls, gossip moved like perfume, slow, invisible, but potent. "She's too polished," murmured the head chef to the chauffeur. "Speaks French to the kids like it's nothing," added the gardener, trimming hedges within earshot of the kitchen window. "I heard she used to work in hospitals," whispered the laundry maid, eyes darting to the hallway. "But she said she was a nanny," said another voice. "So which one is it?" Gloria, of course, had planted the seeds. She didn't need to say much, just raise an eyebrow, purse her lips, drop a casual, "I'm not sure about that one," during morning staff meetings. The rest took care of itself. The house had never liked outsiders, especially not ones like Elaina Brooks. That afternoon, Elaina stood in the nursery folding the twins' laundry when Liana looked up from her coloring book and said, "Why did Miss Gloria call you dangerous?" Elaina paused mid-fold, the soft cotton of Lily's pajama shirt still in her hands. "Where did you hear that, sweetie?" she asked gently. "In the hallway. She was talking to the lady with the vacuum. She said you were hiding something." Elaina didn't react. She just walked over, knelt beside the girls, and picked up a crayon. "Do you think I'm dangerous?" she asked with a playful smile. "No," Liana giggled. "You make pancakes shaped like animals." "Dangerous people don't do that," Lily added, her voice serious. Elaina hugged them both. "Then I guess we'll have to keep making more pancakes." But the tension in the house kept building. At lunch, the kitchen was quiet. Too quiet. The staff avoided Elena's gaze. Even the usually warm sous chef, Maria, barely nodded when she passed. Elaina knew this rhythm. She had seen it before. In boardrooms. In schools. In hospitals. When someone didn't fit the mold, when someone entered a world not built for them, silence became a weapon. The cold shoulder was its own kind of violence. But Elaina didn't push back. Not yet. She observed. She listened. And she documented. Every comment. Every sideways glance. Every name whispered into the shadows. She had come here to help the twins, but also to gather proof. Because something inside this house and inside the company it owned had been allowed to fester unchecked for years. And it didn't start or stop with Gloria. That evening, Conrad was on a business call in the study when Elaina walked past the partially open door and heard a sentence that made her pause. Yes, I know she's overqualified. No, I didn't hire her because of that. I hired her because the girls finally sleep. The beat. I don't care where she came from. I care what she's doing here. Another pause. Then, I'll talk to HR next week. We need to re-examine some of the firings. Something doesn't add up. Elaina didn't move. She simply turned and walked back to the playroom, where the girls were building a blanket fort. But inside, a quiet satisfaction settled in her chest. Conrad Dalton was beginning to question things. And once a man like that started asking questions, the whole system began to shift. Gloria wasn't oblivious. She saw the subtle changes. The way the children clung to Elaina more each day. The way Conrad no longer deferred to her with the same trust. The way staff had begun to question, just a little, whether her judgment was as flawless as she claimed. That night, she texted a contact from her private WhatsApp group for elite domestic professionals. Gloria Stanford. Urgent. Need background check on Elaina Brooks. Claims to be nanny but used to work in trauma care. Something's off. The reply came quickly. Working on it. You want me to dig? Gloria. And fast. Before she ruins everything. What Gloria didn't know was that Elaina already knew about the group. She had known since day one. In fact, she'd already joined it. Silently. An old friend from her graduate program, a black woman who had worked in elite domestic circles, had passed along screenshots, messages, even voice memos. And in one of them, dated just 1 week before Elena's arrival, Gloria had written, "These families need someone who understands tradition. Not someone who's here to prove a point or pull a sympathy card." That line had stuck with Elaina like a splinter under skin. And soon it would come to light. But not yet. The following morning at drop-off, Elaina stayed back an extra moment at the preschool gate. The teacher, Miss Vera, touched her elbow gently. "Whatever you're doing," she said with a smile, "please keep doing it." Elaina blinked. "What do you mean?" "The girls. They used to cry every time they came here. Sit in the corner. Isolate. Now they're drawing, playing, asking questions." Elaina smiled. "Thank you. They're brave girls." Miss Vera nodded. "They are. But brave kids need safe places. I think they finally found one." That night, after story time and lullabies, Elaina stood quietly at the door of the nursery, watching the twins sleep. Not just asleep, but calm. At peace. She stepped out, closed the door gently, and walked down the hallway toward her room. Gloria was waiting. "You think you've won," she hissed. "But I know you're kind. You come in all perfect and polished, make us look like we've been doing everything wrong. Then you disappear when it gets hard." Elaina didn't flinch. "Then I guess we'll see who disappears first," she said softly. She turned and walked away. Gloria stood frozen. Because for the first time, she realized. This woman wasn't just calm. She was dangerous. But not because of violence. Because of truth. And because the truth was coming. Piece by piece. Whisper by whisper. Until the entire house would have no choice but to listen. It was 3:17 a.m. when Lily screamed. Conrad shot upright in bed, his chest tightening. 4 months, this time had become a cruel ritual, the minute his daughters relived the night their mother died. It was the same scream. Not of pain. Not of fear. But of falling. He rushed down the hallway barefoot, heart pounding against his ribs like it wanted out. But as he approached the nursery door, something stopped him. Silence. No more crying. No more thrashing or gasping or shrieking for mommy. He hesitated. Then opened the door slowly. The room was dark but not cold. A faint night light shaped like a moon glowed softly from the corner. Lily was curled into Liana's arms, both girls breathing deeply. A soft hum drifted through the air, familiar, gentle. Elaina. She sat on the rug beside their beds, legs crossed, a hand resting lightly on the blanket near Lily's foot. Her voice barely a whisper now, finishing the last line of a lullaby in French. Conrad stood in the doorway, frozen. Elaina looked up but didn't startle. She held his gaze, then nodded toward the hallway. They stepped out quietly. She had the dream again, Elaina said softly, closing the door behind her. I heard. I started recording their patterns the first week I arrived, she added. I had a hunch. But now I know it's always 3:17. He rubbed his forehead. That's when the paramedics found Elise. I figured. She pulled her phone from the pocket of her robe. Would you like to see? He hesitated, then nodded. She tapped the screen. The video played. The twins' bedroom, timestamp 2 nights earlier. Lily tossed in bed, mumbling. Then the mumble turned into a whimper. Her small body stiffened. Elaina, off-screen at first, entered calmly. She didn't touch the child. Didn't shake her. Instead, she knelt beside her and spoke gently. You're not falling, Lily. You're floating. You're safe now. Daddy is downstairs. Elaina is here. Mommy's not falling anymore either. She's in the stars. We can see her if we breathe slowly. As Elaina whispered, Lily's breathing slowed. Her body softened. She reached for her sister's hand. They both drifted back to sleep. Conrad stood still, the phone heavy in his hand. She's in the stars, he repeated. Elaina nodded. That's what she needs to believe to let go of the fall. He handed the phone back. How did you know what to say? I listen. I read them. She paused. Most adults try to fix children's fears with logic. But fear isn't logical. Especially not in children grieving a mother who never said goodbye. Conrad looked at her long and hard. You're not a nanny, he said quietly. I am, she replied. And more. There was no arrogance in her voice. No mystery. Just truth. I want to know, he said after a beat. Everything. Who you are. Why you're here. What you're not telling me. Elaina met his gaze, steady as ever. I will tell you, she said. But first, I need to ask something. What? Do you trust Gloria? He blinked. What does that have to do with? Do you trust her judgment? He sighed. I did. For almost 2 decades. She ran this house. She buried Elise. She raised me after my father died. She's been loyal. Loyal to whom? He didn't answer. She stepped closer. I'm going to show you something. It might make you uncomfortable. But I want you to remember the girls. Remember how they've changed. She opened her tablet, clicked into a secure folder, and pulled up a video. It was recorded during the twins' second week of preschool, after they started sleeping, but before they started laughing. The scene, a quiet classroom. Prince. Paper. Elaina kneeling beside Lily. You can draw anything you want, she says. Anything you dream about. Lily picks a black crayon and draws a jagged line. Then she says, this is Mommy's car when it rolled. Conrad's knees almost buckled. Another frame, Liana holding a stuffed rabbit, whispering, Gloria says crying is weak. But I miss Mommy. He looked away. I didn't prompt them, Elaina said. I just listened. He shook his head. Why didn't they tell me any of this? They didn't know how. And no one gave them the time, space, or trust to let it out. Except me. A long silence stretched between them. Then, softly, he asked, and what about Gloria? Elena's voice cooled a degree. I know what she's been saying about me. To the staff. To the neighborhood. Even to your corporate HR. He flinched. Excuse me? She made a call last week to a contact in HR. Asked if any background flags had been missed when you hired me. That's private. She doesn't see boundaries when it comes to protecting what she believes is hers. Conrad leaned back against the wall, stunned. I didn't know, he said finally. That's the pattern, Elaina replied. You don't know what happens in your house until it's too late. Then, gently, But now you have the chance to find out. The next morning, Elaina placed a sealed envelope on the breakfast table before the twins came down. It contained printed messages, screenshots, memes, dates, everything Gloria had whispered, documented. As Conrad skimmed through the pages, his fingers trembled. "Why didn't you give this to me sooner?" "Because I needed you to see what the girls saw first. Healing. You needed to believe I was helping them before I showed you how someone else had been hurting them." He looked at her, eyes no longer skeptical, but something deeper, haunted. "How far does this go?" Elaina didn't smile, didn't blink. Instead, she said, "You haven't even scratched the surface." The following day, Conrad Dalton did something he hadn't done in years. He canceled all his meetings. His assistant, confused and flustered, tried to reschedule 3 investor calls and a zoning board session. But Conrad simply said, "Family first." Because everything he thought he knew about his household, about the people in it, about the woman now occupying its center, was unraveling faster than he could control. He stood in the study, staring at the envelope Elaina had left on the table that morning. Each page was heavier than the last. Not in weight, but in implication. Gloria's messages to staff, warnings about Elena's background, suggesting nannies from that area posed a threat to the Dalton image. Screenshots from a private WhatsApp group of elite domestic workers. Gloria had posted photos of Elaina without consent, shared unfounded claims about her past, accused her of manipulation, seduction, even criminal intent. And then there were the emails, the ones to his company's HR department. Conrad still couldn't believe what he'd read. "She's clearly not who she claims to be. You should run a deeper check, especially on her family. These people often come with baggage." Gloria had sent that. About Elaina. Without telling him. And now he wanted answers. Elaina was in the sunroom with Lily and Liana when he found her. The girls were building a solar system out of construction paper. Elaina guided them gently, naming planets, tying constellations to bedtime stories. "Did you know Jupiter has 92 moons?" she asked. Liana gasped. "That's more than Daddy's employees." Conrad let out a breathy chuckle at the doorway. But it didn't last long. "Elaina," he said quietly, "can we talk?" She turned her head. One look at his face and she knew. It was time. They sat across from each other in the drawing room. The twins stayed behind with a coloring book and a warning not to touch the glue. Conrad didn't waste time. "I've seen the messages. The emails. The photos. Everything Gloria's been saying behind my back." Elaina gave a small nod. "I know. And you've been recording all this?" "Yes. From the first day." "Why?" "Because I knew it would happen." She folded her hands calmly. "Because it always does." He frowned. "Always?" She leaned forward, voice low but clear. "When someone like me enters a space like this, rich, white, insulated, suspicion is inevitable. Especially if I don't come in apologizing for my presence." He didn't argue. He knew she was right. "But still," he said, "you're not just a nanny." "No," she agreed. "I'm not." She reached into her satchel and pulled out a second folder. Thicker than the first. Inside, her degrees. Bachelor's in Developmental Psychology from Howard University. Master's in Child Psychology from NYU. Thesis on Post-Traumatic Sleep Disorders in Children under 8. Certificates from New Horizons Medical Center, where she had worked as a lead consultant on pediatric trauma recovery for 5 years. Photos of her at conferences. A published article in the Journal of Clinical Child Psychology. Conrad turned each page slowly, like discovering a secret history of the woman he'd brought into his home. "This is real," he murmured. "It's all verifiable. You can call the institutions." "I will," he said automatically, still flipping. "But I don't doubt it." She waited. Then he asked the inevitable question. The one he'd been circling for days. "Then why are you here?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "That's the real question, isn't it?" He nodded. "Yes." "Then I'll give you the real answer." Her voice lowered. "Your company fired someone 8 months ago. A black engineer. His name was Miles Brooks. Conrad blinked. I remember. There were issues with team fit, some cultural concerns. She raised an eyebrow. You've read that phrase before, she said. But do you know what it actually means? He didn't respond. Elaina continued. He was the top-performing engineer on the East Heights project. Designed the sustainable drainage system that saved you millions. But Gloria told one of your VPs that Miles made clients uncomfortable. 2 weeks later, he was let go. That wasn't my decision, Conrad said, defensive now. I didn't even know Gloria was involved in that. She was. And that decision? It cost Miles his job 2 weeks before his third child was born. His wife fell into postpartum depression. They nearly lost their home. Conrad went pale. How do you know all this? Because he's my brother. The silence slammed between them. Conrad stared. Elaina didn't flinch. I didn't come here to punish you, Mr. Dalton. I came here to see what kind of man you are. Whether your house reflected your values. Whether the rot in your company started at the top, or was growing beneath you, unseen. He exhaled, slow and shaky. And, he asked, I think you're beginning to ask the right questions. She paused. That's why I stayed. He slumped back, the weight of revelation dragging at his spine. And the girls, he whispered. Was that part of the plan? Elaina looked offended for the first time. No. I came to investigate. But I stayed to heal. Her voice cracked slightly. Because when I saw those 2 little girls unable to sleep, stuck in the same grief my nieces were in after Miles lost everything, I couldn't walk away. Conrad pressed a hand to his mouth. My God, he murmured. This is so much bigger than I realized. Yes, Elaina said. It is. And Gloria? I'm not done with her yet. He looked up, startled. You still have more? She's been influencing decisions in your home and your company for over a decade. Hiring, firing, promotion, placement, always cloaked in concern. Always hiding behind loyalty. He swallowed hard. I trusted her. She betrayed that trust. Just not with poison or theft, but with prejudice. Conrad looked down at the folder in his lap. Credentials. Proof. And shame. So much shame. What do you want from me? He asked. Elaina stood. Not money. Not apologies. She looked him in the eye. I want change. It rained the next morning. Not the kind of soft drizzle that danced on windows, but a heavy, relentless downpour that blurred the edges of the mansion's manicured hedges and flooded the cobblestone paths. The sky was gray. So was the mood inside the Dalton estate. Gloria stood in the mudroom, arms crossed, lips tight. She had seen Conrad's face after his conversation with Elaina. She had seen the folder tucked beneath his arm. And for the first time in 18 years, she felt something unfamiliar in this house. Vulnerability. But not hers. It was the crack she feared the most. Because cracks lead to questions. And questions lead to truth. And Gloria Stanford had buried too many truths to survive the kind of questions Elaina Brooks had come here to ask. In the nursery, Lily and Liana were building a blanket cave when Elaina slipped in, damp from the rain, her umbrella still dripping. Did you know, she said as she closed the door behind her, that bears sleep all winter long? Liana gasped. Like, the whole time? Almost 4 months, Elaina said, shaking out her coat. But they don't sleep because they're tired. They sleep because it's the only way to survive the cold. Lily hugged her giraffe. Is that like when we couldn't sleep? Elaina froze for a second, then nodded softly. Yes, sweetheart. Except you weren't sleeping because the cold was still inside you. The twins stared at her, wide-eyed but trusting. And that trust was everything. Downstairs, Conrad stood in front of the fireplace, staring at the orange flames that did little to warm his shame. Miles Brooks. He remembered him now. A quiet, competent man. The kind who didn't laugh too loud in meetings. Who took notes carefully. Who didn't complain when others took credit. And he remembered the conversation. Some of the senior clients raised eyebrows. One VP had said, he just doesn't quite fit the Dalton image. Conrad, distracted, overworked, grieving at the time, had barely questioned it. "Okay," he had said. "Handle it." Now he knew. Handle it meant fire him. And that's exactly what Gloria had done. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through his calendar. 8 months ago. He tapped into archived emails. There was a message from Gloria, CC'd discreetly to the VP in charge of staffing. Not to interfere, but Miles Brooks may not be the right cultural match. I've heard some things from staff. Discomfort, unfamiliarity. Just thought you should know before we put him on the next phase. Conrad stared at the words. Discomfort. Unfamiliarity. Code words. He knew better now. Because Elaina had shown him. That afternoon he called her into the study. Elaina arrived promptly, dressed not in her usual soft tones and caregiver ease, but in a fitted navy blouse and slacks. She looked like the woman in the credentials folder. Not a nanny. Not a spy. A professional. I read the emails, Conrad said without preamble. She nodded. I spoke to our HR head. Gloria's name is in the system more times than I can count, especially in flag termination cases involving Black or Latino employees. Elaina stayed silent. She never held a corporate title, he said, but somehow she influenced the careers of people she'd never met. Based on hearsay, whispers, profiles. That's how prejudice survives, Elaina said softly. It doesn't scream. It whispers. He sat back. Why didn't you just send a letter? Or take this to the press? She tilted her head. Because change that comes from exposure alone rarely lasts. But change that comes from within, from recognition, that's what sticks. You wanted me to see it with my own eyes. I wanted you to feel it. Not defensively, but honestly. As a father. As a leader. As someone who has power and might not have realized how easily it was being weaponized by someone else. He exhaled. And the girls? They're healing, she said, voice softening. But their pain is layered. Like yours. He looked up. Me. You grieved in motion, Elaina said gently. You rebuilt. You hosted donors. You signed contracts. But you never sat still long enough to feel the silence. He looked down, jaw tightening. She didn't press. Just sat with him in the quiet. After a long pause, she said, Gloria called the preschool this morning. He looked up sharply. What? She told the director I might be influencing the girls against their family. That I'm teaching them narratives that don't reflect Dalton values. He felt the heat rise behind his ears. She's gone too far. Elaina nodded. But she hasn't gone alone. She's built a system here. One that thrives in the shadows. In informal conversations. In assumptions. Conrad stood, walked to the window, rain still trailing down the glass. I built this company to last generations, he murmured. But I never realized we were excluding people before they ever got the chance to walk through the door. That's the part that hurts the most, Elaina said. Not what you did, but what you didn't see. He turned to face her. So what do we do? She reached into her bag, pulled out a document. It was a framework, the process, a path forward. Audit your hiring and termination records. Blind the resumes, remove names and photos. Train your leadership team on coded language. Appoint a director of diversity who isn't just a figurehead. And Gloria? Elaina met his eyes. She must be held accountable. Not just for what she did, but for how long she did it unchecked. He looked down at the papers in his hand, then back at her. You came into my house under the pretense of healing 2 children, he said slowly. I did, she agreed. But you ended up opening my eyes. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. The work was only beginning. And Elaina Brooks hadn't come here to comfort. She had come to cleanse. Conrad Dalton didn't return to his office the next day. Instead, he locked himself inside the mansion's study with 3 things. His laptop, a printout of Elena's audit proposal, and a box of archived HR records delivered from Dalton Enterprises that morning. For the first time in years, he was about to do something he hadn't trusted anyone else to do. Read every name, every termination, every hiring rejection, line by line. Elaina had warned him, the truth isn't in the headlines. It's in the paperwork no one ever checks. Now he would check. By noon, the pattern was undeniable. He started with a list of 46 employees terminated over the past 3 years. 29 were people of color. 16 of those terminations referenced cultural incompatibility, poor social integration, or client discomfort. None of them had prior disciplinary records. Most had performance reviews marked exceeds expectations. All had one thing in common: a note in the margin, flagged by GS. Gloria Stanford, a woman who had no corporate title, no office, no email domain, but had managed to insert herself into hiring decisions at one of the most powerful companies in the state. Conrad's chest tightened as he kept flipping. Next file, candidate rejections, internal referrals, resumes marked promising, even outstanding, yet declined for fit. One resume in particular made him pause. Carlos Vega, Harvard MBA, former lead strategist at a Fortune 100 firm, fluent in 3 languages. Rejected after a reference call. The notes were damning. Too polished. Might intimidate leadership. Gloria says not a natural cultural match. Gloria again. Another name, Amir Anyada. Top of her class. Award-winning architectural designer. Rejected. Reason: overqualified. No strong local roots. GS recommends hold off. Conrad leaned back in his chair, hand trembling over his mouth. Overqualified? Too polished? These were excuses. Smokescreens. Carefully coded barriers. And Gloria had built them brick by brick for over a decade. At 2 p.m., Elaina knocked gently and stepped into the study. She didn't ask if he believed her now. His face told her everything. How long? He asked quietly. I started investigating 3 months before I arrived here, she said. My brother's firing was the start, but the deeper I dug, the more I found. You were preparing this before I even met you. Yes, she said, because no one believed Miles. Not even his own friends. He was too calm, too quiet. So I decided to be loud in the only way I knew how. He gestured to the files. You compiled this? No. Your HR did. I just connected the dots. He let out a hollow laugh. And what dots they are. Elaina placed a new folder on his desk. This is from your annual gala list. Last 2 years. Names and invites sent by Gloria's request. He opened it. There they were, glossy photos and guest names. What? Conservative. Elite. Homogeneous. Next to each, an index card noting their connections to hiring decisions. Elaina tapped one photo. This man owns a recruiting firm that screens out candidates with ethnic-sounding names. Gloria sent him a list of your open positions before they were public. Conrad felt bile rise in his throat. She used my name, he whispered. My company. My home, to do this. She used your silence, Elaina corrected gently. That's more powerful than your name ever was. Later that night, he sat in the girls' bedroom after they fell asleep, holding one of Liana's drawings. It was of Elaina, standing in front of a door, with sunlight pouring in behind her. He flipped it over. In crayon, Lily had written, Miss Elaina makes the monsters go away. Conrad exhaled, pressing the page to his chest. She hadn't just been healing his daughters. She had been exorcising a much older demon, one that had lived in his walls for years. And now it was time to remove it. The next morning, he gathered the senior board in a private meeting room on the top floor of Dalton Tower. Legal. Operations. They all came expecting a quarterly strategy session. Instead, they found a slideshow titled, Bias by Design: How Institutional Prejudice Hides in Plain Sight. Elaina stood at the head of the room. Conrad sat to the side, watching. She began with a simple statement. I am not here as your enemy, but I am here as your mirror. Then, slide by slide, she walked them through the data. The flagged resumes. The terminated employees. The rejected offers. The messages. The name, GS, repeated again and again. The room was silent, until one VP whispered, We never knew. And Elaina replied, Because it was easier not to know. She ended with one final question. Now that you've seen it, what will you do with it? That night, Conrad returned home late. The mansion was quiet. Gloria wasn't at her usual post. She had taken a sudden leave of absence earlier that day. Conrad knew it wouldn't last. The real reckoning was still to come. But the first step had been taken. He walked upstairs, peeked into the nursery. The girls were asleep. Dreaming, not dreading. Elaina stood at the window, looking out into the garden. He joined her. "You started a storm," he said. She looked at him. "No, Mr. Dalton. I just pointed at the clouds." By sunrise, the house was no longer calm. It was cracking. The whispers Gloria had once controlled with subtle gestures and raised brows were now ricocheting against the walls, louder, sharper, and dangerously close to turning on her. Staff who once bowed at her authority now kept their distance. Maria, the sous chef, avoided eye contact. The gardener, always eager to chat, didn't wave as she passed. Even Harold, the security guard she'd hired personally, looked at her differently. Gloria felt it in every corner. Respect was vanishing. And the woman responsible was still smiling quietly over breakfast with the twins. In the dining room, Elaina sat between Lily and Liana, gently cutting banana slices into stars while the girls giggled. "Do you know what the word courage means?" Elaina asked. Liana nodded. "It means not being scared." Elaina smiled. "Almost. It means being scared, but doing the right thing anyway." Lily looked up. "Like when you came here even though everyone said we were too hard?" "Yes," Elaina said softly. "Exactly like that." Conrad stood in the hallway, watching. There was warmth in his eyes, but behind it, a storm brewed. He had read every document. He had seen every chart, every message, every manipulated firing. He knew the cost of silence now. And he was done being silent. Gloria entered the room like a soldier bracing for war. "Mr. Dalton," she said sharply. "We need to talk. Alone." He turned to her calmly. "We will. After breakfast." "I'm afraid it can't wait," she snapped. "There are serious matters involving your employee that you should be aware of." Elaina didn't flinch. She continued pouring orange juice for the twins. "I'm speaking about you," Gloria hissed at her. Still, Elaina did not react. Conrad finally stood. "Gloria, enough," he said. Final. Gloria blinked. "Excuse me? I've given you 17 years of trust," he continued. "And you've used it to push out qualified employees, manipulate staff, and plant doubt in my family." "That's not true," she snapped. "It is," he said coldly. "I have the documentation." Gloria's voice cracked. "Mr. Dalton, she's manipulating you. She came here to destroy us. Can't you see that?" Elaina finally stood. "No," she said quietly. "I came here to protect your daughters. From nightmares. From silence. And from people like you." Gloria's face flushed red. "You don't belong here." "And yet," Elaina said, stepping forward, "I'm the one they run to when they wake up screaming." Behind them, Lily peeked out from the kitchen. "Daddy? Why's Miss Gloria yelling?" Conrad turned to his daughter and forced a gentle smile. "Go upstairs, sweetie. I'll be up soon." The girl obeyed, but not before grabbing Elena's hand. "Come with us," she whispered. Elaina smiled. "In a minute, baby." When they were gone, Conrad turned back to Gloria. His voice was steel. "You're fired." Gloria froze. "Excuse me?" "You have 1 hour to pack your things," he said. "I don't want to see you in this house again." She gasped, then stepped forward. "After everything I've done for this family? After Elise? After the girls? After years of whispering poison into the ears of anyone who would listen?" he interrupted. "Yes." Her eyes filled with panic. "She set this up," she cried. "She came with an agenda. She wanted this all along." "You're right," Elaina said calmly. "I planned it all. Every step." Gloria turned triumphantly to Conrad. "You see." "But," Elaina continued, "not to destroy you. To reveal you." She pulled out her phone. "And I'm not done." Elaina tapped her screen and opened a recording. The audio filled the air with Gloria's unmistakable voice. These girls need a proper role model, not someone from the projects trying to play savior. Another clip. People like her don't care about children. They care about power. Conrad's face was stone. Gloria staggered back. You recorded me? I told you on my first day, Elaina said. All staff interactions would be documented for professional oversight. You agreed. Verbally. On record. Another clip played. She's probably here to work her way into his good graces. First it's bedtime stories, then it's family trips, then it's signing papers. Conrad's jaw clenched. You tried to poison my children against the one person who's actually helped them. Gloria was trembling now. I didn't mean. You meant every word, Elaina cut in. Because the only thing more dangerous than your words was your access. Gloria broke. Tears welled. She dropped into a chair, hand shaking over her mouth. Mr. Dalton, please. I built this house. I protected you. You trusted me. And you used that trust to harm people who did nothing but their jobs, he said. That ends today. He turned to Elaina. Do you have more? She nodded. Yes. Good, he said. Because I intend to clean house, starting with the one I live in. By nightfall, Gloria was gone. Her belongings packed. Her codes deactivated. Her legacy dismantled. But Elaina knew it wasn't over. Because the damage Gloria had done didn't stop at the mansion gates. It reached into Dalton Enterprises. Into HR departments. Hiring boards. Partnerships. The infection had spread far and wide. And now? Now came the cure. Elaina stood at the window of the twins' room, watching the rain slow to a drizzle. Conrad approached her from behind. She begged, he said. I've never seen her beg before. She wasn't begging for forgiveness, Elaina said. She was begging for control. He nodded, and then whispered, What do we do next? Elaina looked out into the garden where the storm had passed, and sunlight broke through the clouds. Now, she said, we make sure no one like her ever holds power again. The official press release came 2 days later. Dalton Enterprises launches full-scale internal audit into hiring and termination practices. CEO Conrad Dalton commits to transparency, fairness, and accountability moving forward. The media took the bait instantly. Some outlets praised his bravery. Others questioned his motives. But the headline that Elaina cared about most wasn't on paper. It was in the hearts of the people who had been silenced. And they were finally speaking up. It started with a single email. From Jennifer Watson, former senior financial analyst. Terminated 11 months ago after integration concerns. Mr. Dalton, I read the article. I never thought I'd see the day. Thank you. Then came another. I was one of the employees dismissed without clear explanation. My supervisor told me, off record, that Gloria didn't think I'd match the Dalton culture. Thank you for listening now. Then another. And another. Within a week, over 30 former employees, Black, Latino, Asian, immigrant, had contacted the company's new review board. Their stories varied in details. But the subtext was the same. I was pushed out because I didn't look like the mold. Inside the Dalton estate, things were changing too. Gloria's absence shifted the entire rhythm of the house. The staff moved with more ease. Voices were lighter in the hallways. Jokes returned to the kitchen. The gardener started playing music again while he trimmed the hedges. And the twins? They were sleeping deeper, laughing louder, even drawing again. Elaina found one of their pictures on her nightstand. It showed a tall woman with brown skin and big earrings, standing beside 2 smiling girls under a starry sky. Lily had written across the top, Elaina makes the house happy. Elaina closed her eyes. She didn't cry, but her chest felt warm. Solid. But with the change came resistance. A board member resigned in protest. One high-ranking HR executive leaked a complaint to the press, claiming Elaina had infiltrated the family for revenge. Elaina expected it. Systems don't collapse quietly. They howl when truth claws through the door. She watched the fallout with calm precision. And when a news anchor asked during a podcast interview if she had come for retribution, she smiled and replied, "Retribution destroys. Justice rebuilds." The clip went viral in under an hour. Meanwhile, Conrad was changing too. He walked into boardrooms differently now. Eyes open, back straighter, voice lower, but heavier. He didn't ask for consensus anymore. He asked for accountability. He stood in front of the entire Dalton staff at the quarterly town hall and said, "I let bias creep into my walls, my house, my company. No more." He announced 3 new initiatives. A blind resume policy across all departments. A cultural review board led by external equity consultants. And most surprising of all, a new director of inclusive development. Her name? Miles Brooks, Elaina's brother. When the announcement was made, Elaina watched from the back of the room. She didn't step forward. Didn't need applause. She just watched Miles step to the microphone, his posture proud, his voice clear. "This isn't about me getting justice. It's about us building a future where people don't have to lose everything just to be seen." The room went still, then erupted in applause. Conrad turned toward the back of the room and found Elaina's eyes. They didn't smile. They nodded. And that was enough. Back at the mansion, Elaina sat with the twins one quiet evening under the stars. They were curled beside her on a blanket on the lawn, looking up at the night sky. "Do you think Mommy's watching us?" Leon asked. Elaina pointed to the brightest star. "She's right there. See it? That one that doesn't blink." Lily whispered, "We don't scream anymore." "I know," Elaina said. "Because you listen," Liana added. Elaina nodded. "Always." A long pause. Then Lily asked, "Will you stay forever?" Elaina smiled, her eyes misting. "I'll stay as long as you need me." Inside the house, Conrad stood at the window watching them. The woman who had arrived as a nanny had become the architect of something far bigger than healing. She had built a bridge over years of silence. And for the first time since Elise died, Conrad didn't feel haunted in his own home. He felt responsible and ready. Later that night, Elaina sat on her bed, writing in her journal. She wrote, "Day 47. The storm has passed. But the soil is soft. Seeds planted now will grow deeper. The truth is no longer hiding. And neither am I." She closed the journal, set it beside the lamp, and turned out the light. The mansion was quiet again. Not the suffocating silence of grief. Not the cold quiet of secrets and shame. But a kind of peace that hummed through the walls like music after the storm. It began with small things. The twins started singing to themselves as they got dressed. Staff began sharing stories over breakfast without looking over their shoulders. Even the old butler, Mr. Haynes, began humming show tunes again when he polished the silver. Something was returning. Something like joy. That morning, Conrad found Elaina sitting on the garden steps, watching the twins play beneath the oak tree. She didn't turn when he approached. "You're good with them," he said. She smiled. "They're easy to love." He sat beside her. A pause stretched between them, not tense, not fragile. Just full. "Do you think they'll be okay?" he asked. Elaina turned to him slowly. "They already are. But healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means carrying the memory differently." He nodded. "They talk about Elise more now. That's a good thing." He looked out over the garden. "I didn't know how to talk about her," he admitted. "I thought if I pretended to be strong, the girls wouldn't fall apart." "They didn't need you to be strong," Elaina said gently. "They needed you to feel with them." He didn't speak for a long time. Then, quietly, "And what about you? Who do you let feel with you?" Elena's eyes shimmered. "I had to learn how to hold pain in both hands and still choose kindness." He turned to face her. "That's not easy." "No," she said. "But it's necessary." That afternoon, the twins returned from preschool with drawings in their backpacks. "Look, Daddy." Lily beamed. "I drew our family." Conrad unfolded the crayon drawing. There was a stick figure dad, 2 little girls holding hands, a big yellow sun. And Elaina, right in the middle, smiling. "What's this one?" he asked. "That's Elaina reading us stories," Liana said proudly. And that's the dream catcher she made. He looked closer. The drawing showed Elaina hanging a circle over their bed with feathers falling down. We don't scream anymore, Lily added. Elaina said the catcher keeps the sad dreams away. Conrad folded the paper slowly, heart full. Did it work? He asked. The twins nodded. We sleep all night now. That evening, Elaina sat with the girls in their room. The walls were lined with stars they had cut out of gold paper. The dream catcher swayed softly above the bed. Tell us the story again, Liana whispered. The one about the girl who turned nightmares into stars. Elaina smiled. She began in a quiet, steady voice. Once there was a girl who didn't belong. At least, that's what the world told her. She spoke softly, but her truth was loud. And when she walked into a house filled with sorrow, she didn't run away. She stayed. She listened. And little by little, she turned screams into songs. The girls closed their eyes, breaths slowing. And every time the house tried to push her away, Elaina continued, she stayed anyway. Because she knew the truth, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply stay. The girls were asleep before the last sentence ended. Elaina kissed their foreheads, then turned off the light. Downstairs, Conrad stood in the hallway holding a folder. He found Elaina in the study, sipping tea. What's this? She asked. He placed the folder in front of her. A proposal. I want to fund your next project. She blinked. My next project? You said you never wanted to stay forever. That your goal was to expose the truth and rebuild something better. I did. I want to help you build it. Elaina opened the folder. Inside, a full proposal for a consulting firm specializing in systemic bias correction, trauma-informed workplace policies, and inclusive leadership training. It was everything she had sketched in her journal over the past year, but now real. And what would my role be? She asked, eyes narrowing. You'd run it. I'd fund it. But the direction? The mission? That's yours. She closed the folder slowly. You really mean this? He nodded. Yes. Because you didn't just save my daughters. You saved me. Elaina looked down, quiet. Then we'll need a name, she said finally. Conrad raised an eyebrow. Have something in mind? She smiled faintly. The Stillhouse Initiative. He frowned. Why that name? Because sometimes the quietest houses hold the loudest pain. And sometimes they become the most powerful places for healing. He nodded slowly. It's perfect. The next day, the Dalton estate held a private gathering. Miles Brooks was sworn in as Director of Inclusive Development for Dalton Enterprises. 20 reinstated employees returned to the company. 5 key HR managers were dismissed following internal review. And Elaina? She sat in the back not as a guest of honor, but as the silent architect of everything that had changed. She didn't need a spotlight. The work was enough. That night, as she packed her things in the guest room, she folded one last drawing from the twins. It was simple, just the words. You are family. She placed it at the top of her suitcase. Not because she was leaving, but because she would always carry them, no matter where the road led next. 6 months later, the Dalton estate didn't look the same. The marble floors still gleamed. The chandeliers still sparkled. But the air was different, lighter, more honest, more alive. And the biggest changes weren't in the house itself, but in the people who moved through it. The twins, now 5, started school that fall. On their first day, they didn't cry. They didn't scream. They didn't ask for their mother. They held hands, smiled at their father, and said, "We're brave now." At Dalton Enterprises, the transformation was even more profound. The hiring committee had been restructured. Anonymous resumes were standard practice. Interviews were recorded and evaluated with a bias reduction rubric. And the biggest shift? A newly created division focused on community outreach and equitable urban development. At its head, Miles Brooks, Elena's brother. The man who had once been fired under the veil of cultural misalignment now held an executive title and directed a staff of 25. On his first day, he wore a blue tie and carried no grudge. "Let the work speak," he told his team. "We're not here to punish. We're here to build." Conrad attended every board meeting that quarter. He no longer deferred. He led. When a senior partner suggested replacing the diversity team with a PR firm, Conrad leaned forward and said, "You're thinking about appearances. I'm thinking about my daughters. They deserve a world where justice doesn't depend on who's in the room." The room fell silent, and then shifted. Meanwhile, the Stillhouse initiative launched quietly, but powerfully. Elaina didn't want headlines. She wanted impact. Within 2 months, 5 corporations in the region had signed on for institutional audits. 2 schools requested trauma-informed training. 1 hospital invited her to consult on patient bias and treatment equity. And she accepted them all on her terms. Conrad funded the initiative, as promised. But he didn't interfere. He didn't try to own it. He simply supported and watched her shine. At home, the twins had taken to calling her Aunt Elaina. She still visited every week. Not as staff, not as a guest, but as family. Sometimes she read stories. Sometimes she brought science kits or star maps or paint sets. But most times she simply sat with them, listened, asked them about dreams. And every time she left, they hugged her tight and said, "Come back soon." And she always said, "I will." One Sunday, as the late autumn leaves began to fall, Conrad joined her in the garden while she was teaching the twins about constellations. He sat beside her on the bench, watched her trace the sky with her finger. "You changed everything," he said. She didn't look at him. "No," she replied. "You did. I just showed you where to look." They sat in quiet for a while. Then Conrad turned to her. "I think I would have broken without you." Elaina finally met his eyes. "No," she said. "You were bent, not broken. And bending can be good. That's where light gets in." He smiled, a real one. The kind Elise used to pull from him. "You talk like a healer," he said. She chuckled. "That's because I am." Later that week, the company newsletter released its quarterly update. It highlighted employee spotlights, new initiatives, and community partnerships. But one paragraph stood out more than the rest. Dalton Enterprises is proud to announce a 48% increase in diversity hires and a 37% increase in employee retention across marginalized groups since the introduction of our new equity framework. Real change doesn't come from policies. It comes from people. From listening, from courage, from healing what was hidden. It was signed by Conrad Dalton and Miles Brooks. Co-authored. Equal. At the next investor summit, Conrad took the stage. Instead of talking profits, he talked people. He told the story of a woman who came into his home not to ask for power, but to protect his daughters. He didn't name her. He didn't have to. The crowd already knew. And by the time he finished, the room stood in silence. And then stood in applause. That night, Conrad returned home to find a hand-drawn card on his desk. It was from the twins. 2 stick figures holding hands with a taller one in the middle. And the words, "Thank you for choosing Elaina." He held it to his chest, closed his eyes. Then walked outside and called her. "I have a question," he said when she picked up. How do you forgive yourself?" There was a pause. Then Elaina answered, quiet and clear. "By doing better." And again. Until it stops being redemption and starts being legacy. Winter came softly to the Dalton estate. The trees stood bare, wrapped in frost. Snow blanketed the garden where the twins once ran barefoot in the sun. Inside, the fireplace glowed warmly. And in the quiet, something else had settled. A peace that didn't come from silence, but from truth finally being allowed to breathe. It had been nearly a year since Elaina Brooks stepped through the front door. Since she challenged the walls of power that had kept too many people out. Since she taught a grieving father how to feel again. Since she helped 2 small girls find sleep, laughter, and safety. And now, her time there was ending. "I think it's time," she told Conrad one evening, sitting in the study with a cup of jasmine tea. He didn't need to ask what she meant. He nodded, slowly. "Where are you going?" "Chicago," she said. "A school district there reached out. Their black students are being suspended at 4 times the rate of their white peers. They want help redesigning their behavioral framework." He smiled, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. Of course they want you. She sipped her tea, then said, You've built something here. Something worth protecting. But healing is a moving thing, Mr. Dalton. It doesn't stand still. He looked down. I hoped we'd have more time. You will, she said softly. With yourself. With the man you're becoming. A long silence passed. Then he asked, What if we're not ready? Elaina smiled. You are. Because you asked that question. Her last night in the house was quiet. No farewell parties. No speeches. No formal goodbye. Just stories under the covers with the twins. A whispered prayer for sweet dreams. And one final lullaby beneath the dream catcher they had made together. When the girls fell asleep, Elaina stood for a long moment beside their beds, watching the slow, even rise and fall of their chests. She didn't cry. She didn't need to. Her heart was full. In the morning, she packed light. Just one suitcase, a laptop, and a folder filled with notes, drawings from the twins, a letter from Conrad, and the business plan for the Stillhouse Initiative, now active in 4 states. She walked through the foyer, footsteps soft on the marble floor. At the door, Conrad waited with the girls. Lily held out a necklace, one made of beads and tiny paper stars. It's for you, she said. So you don't forget us. Elaina knelt down. I could never forget you, she whispered. Liana wrapped her arms around her waist. Promise to come back? Elaina looked into their eyes, warm and certain. I promise. Conrad extended his hand. But she hugged him instead. No words were needed. Only gratitude. Only understanding. Only the quiet bond of 2 people who had rebuilt a home from broken pieces. As her car pulled away from the mansion, Elaina didn't look back. She didn't have to. Because she had left something behind that wouldn't fade. Legacy. 6 months later. At a ribbon-cutting ceremony in Chicago, Elaina stood on a small stage beside a black mother whose 6-year-old son had been labeled disruptive by every teacher he ever had. Now, the boy was thriving thanks to a new trauma-informed curriculum designed by Elaina and her team. The woman handed Elaina a note scribbled in crayon. Ms. Elaina, I don't scream in class anymore. I feel safe. Elaina pressed it to her heart, the same way she had once pressed Lily and Liana's drawings to her chest. Back in San Francisco, Conrad read about the event in an online article. He smiled, then turned to his daughters, now 6, who were working on a poster for their school's Family Day. What are you making? He asked. Liana held up a drawing. It showed a house. A big one. With stars above it. And 4 stick figures holding hands. Conrad, Lily, Liana, and Elaina. Across the top, in bold pink letters, it read, Family is who shows up when it hurts. He closed his eyes. And for the first time in a very long time, he felt nothing but peace. Because Elaina hadn't just healed a house. She had dismantled a system. She hadn't just challenged one woman's prejudice. She had shown an empire how to see. She hadn't just cared for children. She had awakened a father. She hadn't just survived injustice. She turned it into light. And that is legacy. If this story of courage, healing, and justice touched you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with someone who needs to hear it. Because sometimes, all it takes to change a broken system is one woman brave enough to walk into it with her eyes wide open and document everything.